All right, Mary Lee, thank you so much for taking the time to be here. I'm really excited to speak with you, talk a little about baking, talk about your book and your charity. So thank you so much.
Oh, thank you. Oh my gosh, this is amazing. I'm so pleased you wanted to talk.
I know I'm a cook well, not by trade, but by interest I'm a cook. I'm not a good baker, but I'm working on it. I've been experimenting with some of your cookbook, and we'll talk about your cookbook later, but I'm also just like fascinated by baking and the science of it. It's
Yes.
something I wish I could master.
Yes. It's interesting. I think people either identify as being very comfortable cooking or baking. And where the frustration comes in is good cooks want to be able to be good bakers, but it
Hmm.
is a different discipline because baking is so much about the science of it.
Well, I
Um,
find that like when I cook, I could improvise a lot more, and then
Absolutely. Yeah.
baking, it's harder to it's harder to kind of save yourself if you mess up. You can't just throw it back on the grill.
Right.
Well, I want to start by learning more about you and your background. I'm just curious. So, how did your baking career begin, and what really made you fall in love with it?
Yeah. So, first of all, I come from a family of great home cooks. My mom was an amazing cook, and she was an excellent baker. And so we were always surrounded by home cooked food and wonderful cakes and cupcakes. Um, and I think that really gave me the foundation to appreciate, things that were handmade.
Right.
But as far as professionally, my start was really in Seattle at the Union Bay Cafe, which was a wonderful restaurant, and chef owner Mark Manley hired me totally green. I had been in advertising for a long time and couldn't wait to get out of that nut house. And my dream really was to work in a restaurant. And Mark loved his line cooks and pantry people to be greens so that we learned from him. And I suddenly found myself in charge of his desserts.
Okay.
And, it was trial by doing. We made everything in house. And it was an amazing experience. And I loved it. I loved working at that restaurant.
So you mentioned you started in advertising. So what
Yes.
was like when you like went to school and like the
Yes.
beginning of your career,
Yes.
what did you ever think about that like baking would become your profession, and what made you have a career change later on?
Yes, I used, I think the last ad agency that I worked for in San Francisco, I used to joke with the people who I managed. I would say, in effect, like, dear God, all I want to worry about is a creme brulee. It was such an intense business. It was so, what have you done for me lately? You could sort of bust your behind for clients every day, and it just didn't seem to matter. And I just got into this mode of really wanting to be in food.
Yeah.
And it really, Union Bay Cafe was a dream job for me. I used to joke, I used to sing my way to work, sing my way home. You're on your feet. It's not a glamorous job. I think with all the cooking shows, people think it's a glamorous job. I cleaned 5 pounds of squid, you know, every day. Trust me, that's not glamorous.
Yeah, right.
um, but I love doing the desserts. And that to me was very almost zen,
Yeah.
because there was a discipline to it. It was the quiet part of the day. And I loved it. So flash forward, we had two amazing little boys and moved to Virginia with my husband's job, Rick's job. And by time the second one was about 4, I thought, I can't. just not be baking. I've got to be doing something that I love besides, being at home, but I still really wanted to be at home.
Yeah.
So that was the start of Mary Lee's Desserts. So did a lot of research, realized that you can have these small cottage businesses, if you get licensed and do everything you should do, which I did. And so I ran that business for 15 years out of our home in Vienna. And it was amazing because the boys would come home. I'd be in my chef's jacket and a baseball hat in the kitchen. And yeah, it was fantastic.
And I believe I read, so everything with Mary Lee's Desserts, it was made to order, right?
Made to order. Yep. And that was interesting for people because I think people, were used to popping into a brick and mortar bakery and saying, well, I need a cake for tomorrow. So there was a little bit of a learning curve with
Right.
clients to say, no, Joe, I'm really just baking for you. So I don't have things that are sitting around. But once they got in that groove, once they understood, planning ahead, even if it was just a few days or 5 days out to put in an order, they knew that like so much attention and not to sound sappy, but love went into everything.
Right.
I never had helpers. I baked everything. Nobody was in the kitchen. In fact, you can ask my husband, that was a running joke. Once the kitchen was sanitized, everything clear, I mean, no one walked in. It was like, done. I'm on now. So they understood the drill. But I was always really appreciative and mindful when I was baking for you. I was never slapping together a cake because Joe's coming tomorrow. I mean, I had in my mind that this was your cake. It was going to be your wife's birthday. And I always talk to my things as they go in the oven. I don't know why I always assign them to be females. And I always say, be a good girl. Every time. I mean, yesterday I was baking. I go into the oven. I said, be a good girl. Because I want things to be perfect. I really do. And perfect doesn't mean, how do I say this? Sort of the European style of perfect is not how I bake. Because to me, they're just a beautiful shell, but they don't taste. To me, most of those type of commercial bakery goods, or even some of the fancy European things, they don't taste like anything.
Yeah.
So, so that really set my desserts apart early in Mary Lee's Desserts, was that people were really taken with the homemade taste because I wasn't doing, 12 cakes that were sitting in a chill case for 5 days. I remember one event in particular that someone walked up and said to me, oh my God, I'd forgotten what a real cake tastes like. And it was sort of at that point where, everyone was all in on Costco cakes and, they thought this was like a great thing to show up to a party with.
Yeah.
So I think to sort of re-educate people that there are better desserts out there, and that, it was a process, like I said, a little bit of a learning curve. But once they were in, I kept clients really all 15 years. So it was, which was a joy for me.
I think for me, like as I've really come to appreciate baking as such an art. And maybe it's because over the last couple of years, my wife and I have just gotten so into the Great British Bake Off. I love that
Yeah, it's
show.
a great show.
But I honestly, it sounds crazy, but like watching that show, I think is what made me fall in love. I'm a baking fan. I'm not a baker yet, but it's just such an art. And just to master it is such a challenge. And I find that with every art requires a lot of inspiration. Is there anywhere that you draw inspiration from as a baker?
think that's a really interesting question. A lot of my favorite desserts that I make and that are in the book really are what I would call Americana, sort of
Mhm.
old-fashioned. I would always explain to someone, they'd say, well, what do you bake? What is your business about? And I'd say, if you had a grandmother who was a great baker, this is what she would have made. So there's something about sort of the authenticity of American baking in the past that I've loved to bring forward
Yeah.
and update a little bit, but not get, I think we overstretch and overdo in the baking world with trying to be cutting edge. I don't think that's what speaks to people. I think
Yeah.
what speaks to people is a gorgeous Boston cream pie that they're like, oh my God, like this is amazing. Or a German chocolate cake, or the best devil's food cake you've ever had, or cupcakes that are truly balanced between the cake and the icing. My cupcakes are never going to be where the icing is almost equal, right? Equal in measure. That's not a good cupcake. It might look beautiful. It's not a good cupcake. I mean, a good cupcake should be fabulous, moist cake, just that little bit of an icing to offset and kind of excite your tongue.
No, I'm getting hungry now, just like thinking about this conversation.
So, I mean, for decades, subscribed to food magazines. Like I used to love Bon Appetit, and I still like Southern Living, and I like to read, different food sites and that kind of thing. So, I draw inspiration, I think, from different places, but I would say a lot of it really is sort of old school baking
Yeah.
sensibility. Yeah.
So I know that in your career, one big moment for you was developing a friendship with, and I want to say his name correctly, David, is it Hagedorn?
Hagedorn, yes.
So how did, your business and your career and your mission honestly change with your friendship with him?
Yeah. So David has been amazing with me since the moment we first talked on the phone, which was probably early 2007. So David is a cookbook author. He's a writer. He's a restaurant critic. And he's the founder and co-chair of Chefs for Equality. An amazing man. And he, at the time, for the Washington Post, was doing a series called Chef on Call. And so this particular this article he was teaching a couple how to prepare dinner. It happened to be Shana Smith, who's a very good friend of ours, but at the time worked for my husband, Rick. So she was fixing dinner for the boss. That was the premise of the article. Well, then David found out that I had this business. And so that became sort of a little bit of a hook in the article. Was not only it going to be stressful for Shana to cook for her boss, but oh, by the way, the boss's wife is pastry chef.
Right.
So that became the hook. And he and I just clicked on the phone, and that started it. And then later that same year, he invited me along with 2 or 3 other fabulous pastry chefs to do another Chef on Call article in the Washington Post. So 2 of my cakes were included in that article. And then the Washington Post asked for me to do recipes, give them 2 recipes in their holiday guide for 2011. And I struggled with that. And that was all because of David. They wouldn't have known me at all. And I thought, well, I'll give them this one fancy cookie, which I did, my chocolate frangelico. then I thought, I need to give them something accessible, something for kids. I should maybe my M&M bars. And I labored over this and I thought, no, it's too simple. This is the Washington Post, for goodness sake. It went on for the entire year of 2012.
Oh, really?
It was the reader favorite recipe. It was the most downloaded, and they did this by month. So literally every month they would say, and this is out of all the recipes, savory, baking, whatever. So the M&M bars then took on this life of their own, which was incredible. And, really it all goes back to David. So the exposure for a tiny little business like mine was incredible. To be in the Washington Post, to have then, that was 4 recipes by that point published in the Post. It's just huge. So, and he and I are very good friends to this day. He's still, he and Shayna both are huge advocates for my cookbook. They gave me a launch party last December with literally the who's who of the DC food world. It was an amazing event. So they've been fantastic. And I know we're going to talk about the Chefs for Equality, but that was
we can go right into it. So I know I've read about it myself, but if you do want to share what Chefs for Equality is as an organization, what they do, what you've done to participate with it, that would be amazing.
Yeah. So David Hagedorn's founded and co-chaired Chefs for Equality, which was an event. It started, I believe, in 2012, and there were 8 of them, up and including 2019. And these brought together, so this was a gathering of unbelievable, the best of the best in the DC metro area food world. So top chefs from the best restaurants, top mixologists. And this was a charity event, if you will. And it started for marriage equality, the fight for marriage equality. So it's part of the human rights campaign effort. And then that morphed in for, all levels of equality for the LGBTQ and questioning community. And David asked me for that very first one if I would bake for the swag bag. And so every guest, you bought a ticket. This is what I believe the first one was at the Ritz in DC. I mean, these are, unbelievable events. And, for me to be asked again, this tiny little, one woman business, to be asked to participate in any way for the Chefs for Equality event, I was floored. I mean, just absolutely floored. So, of course, I said yes. And I believe the first one, of course, I did the M&M bars, individually wrapped in bows and this kind of thing. And I baked, I think there was one year I missed because we were out of town, but I baked for nearly every year for the swag bags. And the last year that I baked for, I don't know if it was, premonition or what have you, I was like, you know what? I got to go big. So that they had upped the number of swag bags, the number of guests they were expecting, to 600.
Oh my goodness.
And I decided to do 3 different cookies in a box for 600 bags. And
I'm doing the math myself. It's like, what, 1,800 cookies?
Yeah, exactly. And the baking was no problem. I mean, honey, I put on music. Like I said, I got my chef's jacket, my baseball hat. I'm dancing in the kitchen. The baking was no problem. Part I didn't think about was building out the 600 boxes, cutting the food safe, decorative paper, and then loading them and putting a little sticker on them. And believe it or not, I pulled in ladies from our little tiny Episcopalian church. St. Thomas Episcopal Church in McLean, Virginia, and I told them what we were doing. They knew it was for Chefs for Equality. They knew it was for the HRC and in support of the LGBTQ community, and they came, and it was amazing. They built those boxes, cut the paper, and then after I baked and it was time to do, and they were right there again. So it was awesome. I mean, just amazing that those kind of events really, I think, bring out the best in us.
Yeah.
They're just amazing. So the back of the book, and I should have labeled what this picture is, but the last two Chefs for Equality. So it's on page 219. So I don't know if you can see it, but that is a picture of the inside of the National Cathedral, the Washington National Cathedral. And it was all lit. The last two Chefs for Equality event, it was lit inside and out in rainbow colors.
That's amazing.
And those events were actually in the sanctuary. And it was just amazing. Yeah.
And and you said you've gone to just about everyone since that they've had them. There might have been a delay with COVID, I imagine, with some events.
So the last one was 2019, and then COVID shut everything down. So I don't know. I haven't asked David what the plans are going forward. I mean,
hopefully it returns.
Yeah. It's I'll let you know, because it would worth the trip down from Philly. It's just great time.
And so just a normal person like myself could buy tickets for an event like this?
Oh, absolutely.
Amazing.
Absolutely. Yeah. We took a bunch of friends. We've done that 2 times around. Our older son, Jack, says it's the best thing he's ever gone to. We actually lose Jack. Once Jack got of drinking age, we would lose him at these events. He's tall. I'm like, oh, there he goes. He's got another martini in his hands. I mean, just so yeah, they're great. I mean, you get to taste food from the best chefs in our area, and the mixologists bring their A game. It's incredible.
I love that. I would love to go. So please keep me posted.
I will.
It's not a far drive from Philadelphia, and I have a lot of friends in DC that I would love to.
Awesome.
I think my favorite personal food experience was we went to when we were on our honeymoon. We were at a resort called the Green O in Montana, and it was just like the most amazing chefs that like would just cook meals like right there in front of you every day. It's just the art of food. It just blows my mind. It's just when it's done right and there's so much passion in it.
Right.
I love it. And I do want to get into you pull up your cookbook before. I do want to get into it a little bit.
Yes.
So this is your first cookbook, and obviously you've been baking for a long time. What made you decide to go out and create this product?
So really was because of COVID.
Okay.
So I call those first 3 months, I call those the dark days, when
oh my God, yeah, terrible times. Like when everyone was just afraid and knew nothing.
We were afraid. Our younger son, Nick, was sent home, like all college students. He had gone on spring break thinking he was going on spring break. Those kids never went back to college. They were sent home. So it was a very tense 3 months. No one had good information. And yet, I don't know about you, but, we kept thinking, oh, well, surely this will just be a few weeks. Well,
oh yeah.
Then by the time we hit like late June, I was like, oh, dear God. And I said to Rick, 2 things. I said, 1, I can't just sit around like wringing my hands, anymore. I have to do something. I have to be productive. And 2, I was like, God, what if something happened to us? And I know I've said this in front of a group before and they burst out laughing, and I didn't mean it to be funny, but my thought was, our boys won't know how to make my desserts. And that, because this really has been my life's work, that felt kind of crushing to me, that if something were to happen to me, Jack or Nick wouldn't have a clue. You know, I have recipes written for me in binders, you know, but
But like deciphering another language though, if a normal person
yes,
looks at
you know, almost shorthand. So that really was the genesis of the cookbook was, you know, I need to get the recipes together, and I need to write it in a way that my sons, who at that point in time had not started to bake, you know, would be able to understand. And as I started doing that, you know, I really found I loved the writing. And I think that goes back to my advertising days. I love the being able to write, and I always try to write in my voice so that when you read it, you should be able to almost hear me speak.
Yeah.
You know, I don't, and I wanted to write in a way that the boys could understand as novice bakers, but that it would also, you know, be relevant and helpful for people who bake a lot. And so I found the process really interesting and fun. So I worked on it for a very long time. It took, I would say, 18 months, start to finish.
Okay.
I had the misconception, very misguided notion, that I was going to be able to do the whole design by myself. Quickly understood that was not going to happen, and that's how I found Book Baby. Was doing research. There are a lot of sites that you know, put themselves out there as, you know, self-published, or can be your recipe book, and they're very narrow focus and not what I wanted. I wanted a very professional. If I was going to do this, just like when I bake, I wanted it to be, in my mind, what I consider perfect.
Yeah.
And Book Baby was phenomenal. I remember I filled out a form online, I think, that just said, you know, I have a question. And Avery, I don't pronounce his last name correctly, but
Avery Bacchus?
yes, Bacchus, called me. He called me. I didn't get like some mass produced generated email. Thank you for your interest. No. He called me and he said, "Hi, this is Avery. I'm with Book Baby, and I'm here for you, and I'd love to talk to you about your project." I was so floored, you know, just absolutely taken with him and his personality. And he's, I mean, I give him so much credit. Yeah, I know he's the upfront part of the process, but he was phenomenal. And he gave me the confidence to keep the book going, keep the writing going, and then let Book Baby do the design. And then I had an amazing manager through the design process, Jeremiah. I don't know if you know him, Winkler.
Yep, Jeremiah Winkler, another awesome person.
Fantastic. And Jeremiah literally had to pretty much hold my hand through the entire design process. That was the only part that was very difficult. There were, I think, I don't know how many cookbooks the design team does, but I think I ended up with a non-foodie as a designer, and that was evident in the design process. But I just stayed vigilant, and Jeremiah never left my virtual side, and you know, we ended up with just an amazing book. And I was most concerned, well, two things. I wanted it to be really user friendly
Yeah.
visually. So it's very important to me that, you've got your cookbook, Joe, on your kitchen counter. Well, I needed to be sure you could read it.
Yeah.
You can't be doing this on your cookbook and then, turning to the stove or turning and putting something in the oven. So I really wanted to make sure it was clean, the fonts were big enough, it was readable, and the pictures were the one area I was worried about. And it's funny because now that's almost the first thing people comment on, is how beautiful the pictures are.
Yeah, I agree. The pictures are stunning. Like, who took those? Did you take the pictures?
So really three different sources. So because of the Washington Post, I remembered the photographer from 07 and contacted him, Len Spoden, and asked permission, told him what I was doing, told him about the charities, and could I please use his work? Well, what I didn't know at the time is Len had taken all these really cool pictures of like my baking pans. Like he had equipment pictures that I had no idea because they didn't show in the Post articles.
Right.
And he allowed me to use all of them. Then there were 2 weddings that I had done the desserts for, because some young couples know that the wedding cake deal is quite a racket. Lots and lots of money for not a lot of taste. And so these 2 couples had me do dessert buffets instead of wedding cakes. And I was in touch with both of those professional photographers. So Anna Grace is the one who took the gorgeous, shot on the front of the coconut cake. And a lot of the pictures are from Anna Grace. And then Rich Hesler, they're throughout the entire book. So I had 3 professional photographers who were willing to allow me to use their work. So that was phenomenal. Then a lot of them are mine. And through this creative writing process, I also learned about pixels and different apps that you can take a photograph you've taken and like somehow, wave the magic wand and get it to look sharp and beautiful. So a lot of them are from me. And then I really wanted graphics up against all the icings. And it's how I always did my binders. I would put, instead of me flipping through, just typewritten pages, I'd put a little picture of a lemon. And so when I needed to find my lemon icing, I'd go boom, 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 there it is.
Yeah.
So I wanted that same ease of use for the baker. And so I found these sources online that these people are either professional, young professional photographers, hobbyists, whatever, and they almost cost nothing. Some of them were licensed, but I have to look at my notes. It's Unsplash, Pexels, and Creative Market. And those are the 3 that I was able to pull from when they're just, pictures of lemons or oranges or chocolate, that kind of thing. But everything that's a dessert, those are all my desserts. That's not pulled from the.
Yeah, I think honestly, like that is one thing that I really think stands out is the accessibility of the book. It's so easy to navigate, and the way you've written it, everything is so clear. And I think that for any level of baker, it just makes a ton of sense. And like to me, it just seems like something that should be in everyone's kitchen, regardless of skill level. And I know that was your mission, but I just want to say my feedback is you definitely succeeded in doing that.
Oh, thank you. Well, the feedback, thank you. I appreciate that so much. The feedback's been great. 2 of 1, people will either post and then tag me or see me personally or what have you. People are being successful with the book. So that to me, I can't ask for anything more. They've said, oh, I made your pumpkin cookies, I made your peanut butter chocolate cake, whatever, I made your German chocolate cupcakes. And they all come back and say, was fantastic. And I used to collect cookbooks. My mom used to collect cookbooks. I finally got to the point where I thought, it's worth the money if I get one recipe that I think is fabulous that I'm going to always make.
Yeah.
I'm hoping with this book, people get lots of different recipes. And I think there's a breadth of, easy things, kind of middle range to I'm an experienced baker and I want to make the fallen angel or what have you. So I think I tried to make it so it had appeal also in the kinds of recipes that were in.
Well, I do want to, I want to get into the charities that the book supports, but before that, I want to stay on topic for one last book-related question. And I'm going to ask for 3, but if you only have 1 or 2, I want to know, I'm going to ask for 3 of your favorite recipes from the book. But if you want to give less than that or more than that, please share. But some of your favorite recipes, I'd love to just to make a star on them on my own book here.
Yes. People ask me a version of that a lot. Like I usually get, what's your favorite thing to make?
Mm-hmm.
And I always say it would be like asking me who's my favorite child. I mean, because I purposely did not include, and maybe it was only 3 or 4 recipes. I didn't include some of the recipes that used to be on my Mary Lee's desserts menu because I didn't feel that they were foolproof for all levels of bakers. And so I've only included recipes that I love. I also included family recipes that I never sold. So it's very hard. That was long-winded and I apologize. Very hard for me to pick, but I think the ones that I pick have an emotional tie. Like our younger son, Nick, who's 23 now, his favorite cake is the peanut butter chocolate cake. And it is such a fun cake to make. There's a mint version of it. I think they're great cakes to do something that's fairly easy and straightforward, but has a big wow factor because the construct of those cakes is like a Boston cream pie in that it's, 3 delicate layers of chocolate and then either this really smooth, yummy peanut butter filling or this really bright mint filling. And then they each get this gorgeous chocolate glaze and you do it so that the glaze just, cascades over the sides. Like it's a fab. Those are both just cake. So I would say the chocolate peanut butter for Nick. Jack, our older son, who's 27, his favorite has always been the pumpkin cookies. And they're like these soft little cake-like cookies. And people really respond to them because they're very different. And he still asks for those. That brings me a lot of joy. So I would say in the cookie realm, that. And then I really like some of the offbeat ones that like the old-fashioned chocolate pudding. Fabulous. I love making that. When the kids were in middle school, I used to be invited to teach middle schoolers in the home ec room how to make chocolate pudding. And you can't believe the notes I would get. And then years later, these kids, if I would see them or whatever, they're like, oh, Miss Mary Lee, you taught me how to make chocolate pudding in middle school, and I still make it for my family. So a lot of my answers are emotional, they're tied to something that that just brought me a lot of joy. But there's really not anything in the book I don't enjoy making. And I don't mean to sound, I will, okay, I'll be completely honest and transparent. My carrot cake was very popular. I find carrot cakes just to be a complete pain to make. I don't enjoy making that. I don't know why. I can't explain it. That's probably the only recipe I would say I just don't get that level. I'm not dancing when I'm making the carrot cake. We're totally honest, but
Well,
in
that's
the end
good.
result, people love the end result. I just not a fan of the actual doing.
I do love carrot cake, so that's bad news.
Well, you can try it. It's not to
Well,
say you might get a lot of joy out of that recipe. I just did not.
well, we're recording this exactly 1 week before Thanksgiving, so there is a
Yes,
lot of good stuff in here that will help us diversify. At least in my household, I think we're going to diversify from our standard just
yes.
pumpkin pie, apple pie. We're going to get a little more creative this year.
Yeah,
I'm excited
and
about those
we
things.
as a family, we stopped uh making pies for Thanksgiving because we all overeat at the meal and then nobody wanted the pie.
Yeah, and the
And
pie's
it
just sitting there.
becomes sort of this point of conflict because Rick and I didn't want to eat the whole pie. We weren't going to waste the pie. So of course, eventually we ate the whole pie. And that when I was baking for clients, I was really up to almost 900 cookies at Thanksgiving time and over 1,000 at Christmas. Because what I used to do was I would pick, say, 8 to 10 different cookies. I would blast that out on email and I would let people customize their holiday platters. And people really responded to the idea of having just a little bite, just a little something sweet at
Yeah,
Thanksgiving. And I know the tradition is pie, but I know we're not the only family that has no room for the pie.
no, you're definitely
So,
not.
no, we would do pumpkin cookies. My Aunt Johnny was famous for her little pecan tassies, which is a very southern little tartlet, but they're really like a 2-bite pecan pie. And so those two for Thanksgiving to me are like a shoe-in.
My mom would make a pecan tart, kind of like that.
Yes.
But
Yeah.
she'd make them for Christmas, but one of my
Yes.
favorites.
Yes. Yeah. So I think cookies are definitely the way to go for Thanksgiving.
I I agree. That's actually a good point. I feel like we'll probably still not making pies,
Yeah.
but I'm gonna push on the cookie charge.
Good.
I
Good.
I do want to mention this is, one of the most meaningful things I know about your book is that you don't make a dollar off any of your sales. And I think that's something I really want to share with readers, and it really says a lot about you. And I want to just give you an opportunity to talk about one, why you chose to make this a completely charitable book, and then what made you select your 3 charities, which are World Central Kitchen, the Trevor Project, and St. Jude Children's Research Hospital.
Yeah. Yeah. So um to me it was just very natural. When I decided that I wanted to write the book, I knew instantly I did not want to profit from it. It just it felt right to me to have this be a vehicle for charities. And so that to me, it was just a very easy decision, something I had no trouble coming to. And we were fortunate enough, that we could pay the production costs ourselves at Book Babies. So it was not an issue. And I try to get everyone, to buy through Book Baby because obviously, as you well know, half the cost of the book comes back to me through when it's purchased through Book Baby. And then I can donate $22.50 split 3 ways. So it's huge. And there are 3 indie bookstores that are carrying me, and I love people to support. And
Always support indie bookstores. It's the
yeah,
best thing you could do.
so and these also happen to be women owned. So for me,
Amazing.
that's fantastic. So then there was the process for me, thinking about, well, what charities would I want to support with the book? I wanted to do something in the food world, which, was very natural to me, feeling that I had been blessed to participate in that with my business for 15 years. And World Central Kitchen just really does God's work. I mean, what Jose Andres does with that charity around the world, whether it's a natural disaster here in the US, he's always taking care of our first responders, as well as the people, who've been affected by the natural disaster. Of course, I'm sure you know that he's over in Ukraine. And he actually goes. So he's not a celebrity, chef that's done this, which even that would be amazing, come up with this unbelievable organization worldwide. He actually goes. I mean, he's literally boots on the ground. And I remember a few years after 9/11, and it was probably a sermon at church, and the question was posed, when you look back on your life, are you going to be someone who runs towards the disaster or away? And of course, that's what the first responders did on 9/11. And it just really struck me that that's what Jose does. He runs towards, he runs in. And I really wanted to support the World Central Kitchen. So that was, just an easy answer for me. St. Jude is a lifelong charity for Rick and I. It was a lifelong charity for my mom and dad. My mom was of Arabic descent, and Danny Thomas, who was Lebanese American, started the foundation of American Lebanese Syrian charitable, organization. It's called ALSAC. And that was in order to build and maintain St. Jude. And St. Jude, those children are being cared for, cutting edge medical treatments. They pay nothing. The families pay nothing. So it is all on donations. So St. Jude to me was very natural. And because I've always wanted to support the LGBTQ and questioning community, I wanted a charity that would work in that sector. And actually, my husband's college roommate, so we're going back a long time, came out to us in 2017, 2018, that he was transitioning to become a woman. We had no idea. We'd known and loved Marty for 35 years, and we were so proud of the courage it took to become Marcia. And she only lived as her true self for 2 years and then died after major surgery in 2020. And I wanted to do something that Marcia would be proud of, would think I was doing the right thing. So the Trevor Project does suicide prevention across the United States for LGBTQ and questioning youth. And I just thought, that's it. That's the program that I want to be involved in. And they're just doing fantastic work. So yeah, and people, it's been really interesting, Joe, people who don't know me, and this has happened many, many times. I talk. I think you can tell I'm a talker. So, I'll meet anybody in the grocery store, walking on the beach, and get in conversation. And the minute I say I have a cookbook to a stranger, I kind of get oh, isn't that cute? You get the polite. Yeah. The minute I say I'm not taking a penny, it's all going to these 3 charities. I tell them about the 3 charities. And to date, I've almost donated 11,000, split 3 ways, which in a year, less than a year, I'm incredibly proud of. They're all in. I mean, I've had strangers literally say, where can I buy it? I want to buy this book, because they're very moved by those charities.
Yeah, and it's like, you're not just getting a cookbook, which is
Yes.
so much, brings so much to your life as well, but you're also doing something that's meaningful and you're helping people and you're making a difference. And I think that each purchase makes such a difference, makes this book so much more special. And also the fact that like this is something you created as like something you want your children to remember you by. And it just the whole book, it just tells a story of like your life and your values. And I think that, that's what makes it so special. And I really hope people continue to see that and continue to buy it because it's awesome. It's just amazing to see a project like this happen.
Oh, thank you. Well, I'm thrilled. People have been so kind. So it's just, and I think it's on my website, it may not be in the book, but the joke during my 15 years in business, nobody ever got a recipe out of me. Not
Hmm.
family. And I told you I come from a family of cooks. I have three older brothers. They're all Mike, Jim, and Dave. They're all great cooks. And then their kids, are great cooks. Nobody got a recipe out of me. So it's sort of a thing for the family too. They're like, oh, we finally get it, but she's made us pay for
Well, it's
it.
good. They're paying for a good cause. That's the
They
thing.
are.
Exactly.
They are.
Um, well, I do want to ask my last question I have for you is if you're like working on any other future projects or just anything you would like to share with people that, events, anything you'd like to highlight.
Yeah. Oh, well, thank you. Yeah, so you know that, your best chance to promote the book is when it's new. And I came out at the end of last year, but COVID was still a thing.
Mhm.
First quarter of this year, when I had an opportunity to have this, it's going to be a great author event at a restaurant. And Omicron had different plans. So that fell through, understandably. But as we came on this holiday season, I thought, I really want to generate more donations. 12,000 is in my mind. And how can I do that? And I thought, I love like question and answer type formats. I love when this on the Splendid Table on NPR, you can call in and ask your questions. Thanksgiving time, they usually do, a big call in. So that's what I've pitched to the three independent bookstores is a holiday baking question and answer. And so I've got three author events coming up
Amazing.
in December, and it's going to be fantastic. So one is in DC at Bold Fork Books, which is you would lose your mind. It's all food and drink centric. Their entire
Really?
bookstore is
Wow.
mixology books, cookbooks, books about foodies, books for kids having to do with food. I mean, literally, I walked in, I did a lot of Christmas shopping there last year. I was like, oh my God. So that is just a foodie's dream. So that'll be really fun. Bard's Alley is a wonderful woman-owned bookstore in Vienna, Virginia. And that's the bookstore I actually baked for, my only time in retail.
Okay.
And a lot of the morning treat recipes in the book are recipes I designed for Bard's Alley. And so that's my first event on December 4th, Bold Fork, December 5th. And then a brand new woman-owned bookstore in the Reston Town Center called Scrawl Books, and that's December 12th. And then I'll tell you one other cool thing if you have a minute. So, everyone has like their secret ingredients, and I wanted to be sure that people could, create my recipes as I made them. So I think that's something that sets my book apart, as I like to say, I name names. So I've named brands, and these are all accessible, easily accessible brands that have been around literally since your grandmother was baking. And my one secret weapon, which I regret at the time of writing, it was hard to find because of COVID, is Orlando Mexican vanilla. and it's a family-run small batch vanilla. And
Okay.
that's all I've used for 15 years. And I contacted Teresa, the owner, and I said, Teresa, I've got these author events coming up. I'd love to include Orlando vanilla in this. And I explained to her about the charities. She wrote back and said, I want to be part of what you're doing for these charities. And she gave me a case of vanilla that's
Wow.
worth it's worth almost $1,000. She wants to participate in these charities.
That's amazing.
And to me, that's, on a grand scale, she's doing something phenomenal, but this is the reaction that I get from people when they hear about these three in particular. People will say, I love the charities you picked. I love those three. So so I'm just thrilled. So
well, that's awesome. I'm so glad that you get to do these author events. They make such a big difference, and it's so good to like get out in the community and share your work, because people, especially with your book, when people learn that this is truly something, like this is a book that you've made for others, and I think it's for others, it makes their lives better, it donates to amazing charities, people are drawn to that, and I certainly was, and I wish you the very best. I'm going to keep you posted. It is baking season, so I will let you know what we make for Thanksgiving. There will be one Mary Lee dessert on
I fully hope to hear that it went well. And that, I guess that's the last thing that I'd like people to know about the book is that, most cookbooks, and understandably so, those recipes are tested for publication.
Mm-hmm.
Mine were recipes I made for 15 years. So I think it's the consistency, really, if you read all my tips and tricks and follow the directions, you're going to be successful. And that is my promise. And I included my website. People can get a hold of me. Like, I'm here. I'm here to answer your baking questions.
Well, I might have some.
Yep, you got my cell number anytime.
Well, thank you. And remember that for all listening and watching, you can purchase Baking the Best of Mary Lee's Desserts on anywhere you buy books, but particularly Book Baby Bookshops. So more proceeds are available to be donated to 3 amazing charities. So thank you so much for the time. This was such an amazing conversation. So
Joe, I had so much fun. This was great. Thank you. I appreciate the opportunity so much.
Of course. We'll talk soon. Have a great day.
Okay. You too.
Bye.
Thanks.